Hey, Angelo.
Hi, Dean. How you doing?
Good, thank you. All right. So, hypothetically, today's day one, because you just started a 1 year brand new engagement with a brand new customer. You're the fractional CMO. Okay. Uh, Tell folks a little bit about you and tell them what a fractional CMO is and does in those first 90 days of a 1 year engagement.
Okay. Well, as you introduced me, Angelo Ponzi, I'm a fractional CMO, and my company's called Craft. We focus on researching customers and prospects and competitors in the marketplace in which you compete. Then we
Hmm.
create a marketing blueprint for that client. So we call it a revenue growth plan.
Hmm.
And then for some, we do oversight and management and make sure the client stays on brand, on plan, on budget, and on time. And that's how they really get to really benefit from that continued engagement.
Right.
In the first 90 days, our approach is the first thing I do is I do an assessment, and usually with the stakeholders of the organization. And I take them through a battery of questions, both quantitatively and qualitatively. And I'm trying to understand from their perspective how they think they're either perceived in the marketplace or various aspects of their business. And by doing that, I'm able to look at not only on an aggregate, but also individually and to see if there's gaps, if you will, or disparity between the stakeholders. Part of that is because, 90 days later, and when the plans are ready and they didn't agree in the beginning, they're not going to agree at the end. So that's my primary goal, and that helps me map out what needs to be done. So during those kind of first 90 days, we're digging into the competitors, we're deconstructing their competitors, trying to understand them, looking for gaps, messaging, and whatever the assignment happens to be. We're interviewing customers, we're interviewing prospects, interviewing referral partners, and really building a base of knowledge. And by understanding how the customers, if you will, view the brand, and then understanding how the brand thinks they're viewed in simple
Right.
terms, then we can start to identify areas that we can capitalize on that we need to fix. Then from there, we work on messaging and positioning strategies. How are we going to differentiate? If the ante is everybody's got to do X, Y, and Z, now how do I differentiate them? And then part of that process, then, of course, is building a revenue growth plan. Where do you want to be in 3 years, 5 years? How are we going to get there? And it's not just tactics, but ultimately, is it acquisitions? Is it inventory management? Is adding more salespeople? Whatever it happens to be. I'm a very holistic marketer, and so I get involved in a lot of different aspects, and that's really the first 90 days before we do anything else.
All right. Hi, Robert.
Hey, Dean.
Robert, so same thing, right? You just started a 1 year engagement. Today's day one. Tell folks a little bit about you and what happens in the first 90 days of a new engagement with a new client.
Sure. Yeah, my name's Robert Toler. My company's Propulsion Growth Solutions. I've been doing this for nearly 20 years, helping small business owners kind of stand things up, small to medium business owners that really don't want the burden of, a full-time executive necessarily, but want the expertise and knowledge of one. During the first 90 days, it really is setting the foundation, really. I think meeting with the stakeholders is really the first thing, understanding their perspective. Usually it's a partner that brings me in, or if it's the sole owner, there's leadership that needs to be talked to and understood. They need to understand why I'm there and vice versa, and understanding what their perspective is of the pain points and reasoning for me coming in. Then it's about knowing the numbers. So I think building that foundation is understanding the people first, and then the numbers second. So it's about coming in, understanding their cost of goods or services. A lot of owners don't know these simple, basic numbers, right? So making sure we solidify these numbers and agree upon them is really important.
Mhm.
Um, and then after we kind of get through the people and the numbers part of it, then it's looking at the market, looking at the audience, who's engaging, who's liking and engaging on social media, who's responding to emails and all of this kind of stuff, doing some market research, understanding what's happening out there as well as with the competitors. Because I think if you don't understand the landscape, it's hard to, it's hard to do successful strategies in a bubble, right? So I think that foundation includes all of that competitive analysis. Once I get all of that together, then it's kind of doing a formal auditing of the current marketing for the company, right? Understanding what they've done, what they haven't, where they've had success, where they haven't, understanding the finances of it. A lot of times, a marketer will come in and just ask for a budget. I want to understand the cost of goods or services to understand how we got to those numbers so that I'm making sure that, we're optimizing the business. Again, it's a holistic approach to things, not just a narrow lead gen or fix my social media or whatever that is, right? A chief marketing officer is coming in to help the whole business. So you put that together, that all leads to your KPIs, right? So you can set the proper goals and have an established set timeline in this 90 days over a year's time. What are we going to accomplish together? And then I think it's building the strategies to get to that point, right? Is it hiring new people? Is it replacing vendors? Is it starting new campaigns or cutting off ones? All of these different things have to go into that. But you really have to, in the first 90 days, set that foundational piece and have good communication with the shareholders so that you can have success for the rest of the year.
So, Robert, let's pretend that I'm the CEO at the client that you're just engaged with, right? Like chances are I had to get an agreement from somebody, even if it was just myself, right, to allocate the spend and bring in a fractional CMO for a year, right? How does the CEO, how does the company sort of squeeze maximum, like every last penny of value out of that 1 year engagement with a fractional CMO? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, really it comes down to a few things. I think clear communication and clear KPIs has to set the foundation for what you guys work on together month over month and quarter over quarter. I think integrating with different departments, working with the finance and ops side of things to make sure that you're fitting in with the budgets and asking for the right money, playing nice with their rules and the process they like to work within. Operations, that you're not stepping on any toes or doing any initiatives that may cross over and affect their needs and wants. So I think those things are really big. I think if you can play nice in the sandbox, right, that builds a lot of great value, first off. Then the quality data and reporting come into that. I think you're always hired to get results, right? I mean, that's a bare minimum, is that I come in and I create results for you. And we set up what those results are based on the 90 days and all of these things that we kind of talk about to set this up. But it's really important to have good quality data and reporting to back all that up month to month, so that when you're having a bad month or a really great month, you can justify it either way, right? And be able to talk about it on a factual level and an actionable level instead of getting caught in the weeds and being emotional about it. A lot of times, if you don't have the reporting and substantiate where you're at in your positioning, you can get buried pretty quickly as a CMO. That's pretty much it.
Angelo, I want to turn that question inside out a little bit. All right. You've had lots of clients, you've worked with lots of companies at this point. How does a company typically waste some of the money that they spent on their fractional CMO? Like, what do they do that made that person less productive, or what didn't they do that ended up being a bad decision in the long run? How do they waste the money after they make the decision to bring in a fractional CMO?
They don't listen to me.
Yeah.
That the goal is in working with these clients is setting some solid objectives and
Right.
making sure that the team and holistically all the different departments that you have to work with. And to me, it's a team sport, if you will. And so making sure that everybody has a clear understanding of what we're trying to accomplish. I think what gets off track many times is when leadership thinks, number one, that hey, we can take your plan and just go execute now. That has probably been the bane of my existence over the last 10 years. Is we get going, things are moving, and then they start to take control, and they hand it over to a junior marketing coordinator, and it just goes off the rails. And so really getting them to understand that each and every month we're watching the data, we're digging into the data, Over the years, I've been surprised in how much they don't spend understanding their internal data, understanding those metrics, and how those are applied going forward. And so that's where I think a lot of times it's like, hey, I've been doing this for 20 years. We want to grow from 3 million to 50 million in 3 more years. And my answer is how? You just can't throw a dart in the wall, and we need to work backwards. And so unrealistic objectives, I think, also is a big situation where it gets off the rails, and I could certainly pontificate on that.
Okay, you mentioned the team. Let's talk about the marketing. Like, I'm the CEO. I'm thinking about my marketing function, like my team, my department. How is that team going to be different or better at the end of the 12 months of having a fractional CMO in place? Do you think? How are they going to be different? How are they going to be better?
Well, one of the first things, if they have an internal team, which
Yeah.
most of them have somebody,
Mm-hmm.
I assess that team. Are they frankly qualified to be in the
Right.
position that they're in? And then based on that, understanding their roles and how they work together. Worked with a client last year, 15 people on staff. One of my assignments was they don't like each other anymore. People are turnover is tremendous, and I need to
Mm-hmm.
stop the bleeding. And so part of that was understanding and getting them to basically play well together, and really getting them focused on what their tasks are, what their job is, and making sure that they execute every day, understanding that there's a bigger machine, if you will, and they're not just they're a piece of it, but they have to understand their role and how they contribute. And I think many companies run into this where they just got them, the marketing department silo, they're running their tasks. And a lot of times they may or may not understand the bigger role that they play. And so I want to make sure that everybody understands that and how their contribution helps move the company forward.
Yeah. Robert, what do you think? How does a marketing team or a marketing department, if it exists at that company, how's it going to be different or better at the end of the year? Like, what do you do to make it different or better?
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, if they have a team, certainly, even
Mm-hmm.
if it's a couple people or a dozen people, generally speaking, one of the missions is direction. Right. There's a lot of things happening. Somebody's running off doing social media and somebody's doing some paid ads, or something's happening along those lines, but there's no cohesion in the team. So, a lot of times I see, as much as we hate meetings, morning stand-ups, these kind of things really help kind of unify a team, especially in a remote situation. So I think that's good. I think the other things that is the efficiencies that, a good FCMO can bring to the party, right? And just cleaning things up, filling in the knowledge gaps, right? And just tying everything together, I think, is one of the big pieces of seeing the macro and not being stuck in the micro when it comes to working with these companies.
Mm-hmm.
I think the mentorship is probably one of the bigger pieces that I probably get out of this with some of these teammates. Like, sometimes you do have to replace or reposition some people, repurpose some people based on their skills or knowledge. But I think doing that is actually one of the things I love about the job, right? Is really
Well,
empowering the people to be better.
you know what? Let's talk about that for a second. Imagine that your best friend comes to you and says, "Hey, Robert, my kid graduated and just got their first full-time job. They're the most junior person on a marketing team at a company, and that company has just brought in a 1-year fractional CMO. Can you give my kid some advice on how to really take advantage of that opportunity when it comes to learning from that fractional CMO? What would you say?"
Yeah, I think that certainly somebody with the right experience, a good CMO, learning by example is one of the best things you can do, right? Being under the wing, being part of the meetings, understanding the decision-making process of what a CMO does, getting just the peripheral of everything that happens, the responsibilities, considerations. I think all those things get absorbed, right? Even if they're not realizing it's happening. Teaching them best practices, I think, is really strong. Making sure that if they are a junior, that you're helping them build a really strong foundation, right? So that they're not going off into the deep end on something or have some theory or conspiracy that they thought that was happening with marketing or the way SEO works or whatever else, right? It's just keeping them high level, keeping a well-grounded base that they can build from. I think is probably one of the best things I've done over the years. And then exposing them to enough things so that they can find out their interests, right? We all have our expertise. It's like, what can I do to help you not just learn, but find passion, right? And that's what's going to make you amazing at your job.
Angelo, so let's imagine that there's been like a split in time. You show up, it's day one of a new engagement. You're meeting the team. The most junior person is Angelo as well. There's like another version. There's a 22-year version of you, first job, and you're like, dude, like I can't show you any favoritism, but if I was you, knowing what I know now, here's how I would kick off the first year of a marketing career if there was a fractional CMO around. What would you say?
Well, I would tell myself, absorb and
Tell
listen
the other
and
you.
learn, and
Yeah.
and ask questions. I have found in situations there, the junior people will sit there afraid to ask a question for fear that they'll look stupid, if you will. But I encourage them. That's how you learn. You have to understand. We learn through failures, but by not asking questions, trying to get clarity and going down a path that is wrong, that's where they get in trouble. So, one of the things that I always do when I am mentoring is having a lot of different sessions, usually once a week. I try to go through as a group. I talk to each one as an individual, looking for concerns or issues that they may have, and get them to bring ideas and then explore those ideas and try to show them that, there's no bad idea, if you will, but how can we help improve it and really focus them so they understand that maybe their idea just needs some tweaking. I'm flashing back on a client from last year, and good idea, but the focus was wrong. All you do is, if you change your focus, now all of a sudden it becomes a really good idea. And just constantly staying involved and I make myself accessible to the team, as opposed to, sitting in the ivory tower and, go, I'm the CMO. That's not how I work.
All right, so I got to ask you a question. I've been asking people for the last few episodes this question, and I'm not trying to be rude. Angelo, we'll start with you. There's easier ways to make a living, man. Why do this job? This job can be enormously frustrating at times. Why do this job? Why do you like it?
I like solving problems.
Right.
I always have. And for me, that's the enjoyment I get out of it. Yes, it's very frustrating, especially when you've worked for a long time and the next thing you know, the client's got the plan on the shelf, or they're off handing it to some junior person. But ultimately, it's figuring out how to solve a problem that they have. And that's been my passion. It's how I focus, and it's understanding their pain points, their issues, their growth problems, and how do we get there from a logical standpoint, backed by data. I have a research background, so it's all about the data and getting them to understand that the data provides direction, not necessarily the answers, but direction. And that's what keeps me coming back. Yes, it has been very frustrating at times. In my agency days, we used to joke it'd be a great business if it wasn't for clients.
Yeah. And I started off in software, and the oldest engineer, software developer engineer, on the first team I ever, he had a sign up in his cube, and it said, "If software is hard to make, it should be hard to use." So Robert, why do this job, man? Why do you like this? Why would you recommend this job to someone else?
Well, I started as a graphic designer early in my days, and as you know, I graduated in 2001. So date me how you will, but I ended up with the advancement of the internet and stuff in that period of time. My clients going from graphic design to how do we make a website, how do we market it, how do we, this, that, the other thing. And so over the years, I've been indoctrinated by it. I love marketing. I love the speed of marketing. I love the technology of marketing, right? It's the one thing outside of like accounting and law. I work with a lot of law firms. Law's slow, right? Marketing is sometimes too fast, especially with the day of AI here, but I still enjoy it thoroughly. So I think that, and then the problem solving part of it, I love seeing a small business owner that has a great idea or a ton of passion be able to turn the corner and be successful, right? And usually that's because of poor marketing, right? Now they can be bad managers and all that stuff and so on and so forth, but those things can be resolvable. But getting your marketing under control, it's such a weird gray area, right? For so many businesses to figure out how to do lead gen and all this stuff, that when they finally have that aha moment, right? And you can sell them on the process. And I don't need to be their CMO forever, right? I'm happy if I'm around for my average around 14 months right now. So if I'm there and they have that aha moment and they run off into the sunset happy, like that's what I love happening, right? Is that they find their business and can take care of their families and do what they want based on some of the input and knowledge that I gave them.
So there's an impact, and you can see the impact.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Robert, who should be contacting you these days, and how should they get to you?
I really deal with service-based industries. I've got some home services. I've got a lot of attorneys. I've got hoteliers and a couple restaurants. I really was trying to scale this year. One of the things, the frustrations in being a CMO, a fractional one, anyways, is the demand, the assumptions, the expectations that come along with it, right? And as long as you can kind of communicate those up front, it's okay. But over time, they can either be taken for granted, so on and so forth. So one of the things I'm working towards is building a more of a productized service flow for what I do, and really narrowing down on the businesses. So legal, hospitality, home goods service, home services is really where I play the most.
All right, cool. And then, and how should people contact you at your website there?
My LinkedIn here on the screen is great. LinkedIn.com. RZ Toler is the handle.
Okay.
RZ Toler is my handle on any social media. Growthpropulsion.com is my website.
All right. And then, Angelo, who should be contacting you these days, and how should they do it?
Yeah, LinkedIn is certainly probably the easiest because they can get to everything else from there. So that's on the screen. I focus on clients in that $5 to $75 million, both B2B and B2C. I've worked with semiconductor manufacturing equipment to ice cream. But right now, the focus is really more on manufacturing and distribution clients. I do have a lot of retail experience as well as some hospitality. And usually if they're in, sales decline or they're moving into new markets, looking at adjacent markets, or frankly, their competitors are eating their lunch, is usually when I get the call. It's usually the owner of the company, somebody in senior leadership, whether it's the CEO, CFO. Obviously, they're the CMO. They don't call me, but that's typically where I play these days.
All right. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here. This was really great, really educational for me.
Sure.
Thank you, Dean.
I think for every other episode from now on to the end of time, I'm going to ask people why they do this friggin' job. You get a lot of good answers. All right. Well, this was episode 68. So thanks everyone for watching. You're probably watching us in a clip. So if you see this clip, it was nice to have you with us, and check us out somewhere else. We're everywhere.